Vadda Ghallughara, or the Greater Massacre, took place in 1762. More than 35,000 Sikhs lost their lives in a battle against Ahmad Shah Abdali's forces. Ghallughara is a little-known and infrequently used word embedded deep in Sikh history. It says a lot about the psyche of the Sikhs, especially in the face of overwhelming odds. Ghallughara is defined as a large-scale massacre, carnage, or genocide signifying aggression and persecution. The word Ghallughara originated in the 1700s, sadly as a fallout of two massacres that took place in Punjab during that century. The first happened in 1746 when 7,000 Sikhs were killed and 3,000 were captured. We call this the Chota Ghallughara, or the Lesser Massacre. The other was the aforementioned Vadda Ghallughara. We mark the anniversary of this massacre in the month of February. Ahmad Shah Abdali, or Ahmad Shah Durrani, was the founder of the Durrani Empire and is regarded by many to be the founder of modern Afghanistan. Before he became the ruler of Afghanistan, he was an officer in the service of the ruler of Persia, Nadir Shah. He was a cavalry commander when Nadir Shah invaded India in 1738, sacked Delhi, and took the peacock throne of the Mughal emperors, the Kohinoor diamond, and thousands of slaves back to Persia. Having had a taste of how much loot could be easily taken from India, Abdali started his own invasions when he succeeded Nadir Shah. In fact, he invaded India 8 times between 1748 and 1767. Before these invasions began, Sikh warriors used to be broken up into hundreds of bands that operated independently. But now they decided to organize into one army, the Dal Khalsa. Initially, their commander was Nawab Kapoor Singh. But when he began to age, one of the regiment commanders, Sardar Jassa Singh Ahluwalia, became the commander of the Dal Khalsa. The army was divided into 11 missiles. The missiles were named after their commanders and/or their villages. So they had names like Ahluwalia, Singhpuria, Sukarchakia, Shaheed, and Ramgarhia. The Sukarchakia missile was under the command of Naud Singh, who was the great-grandfather of Maharaja Ranjit Singh. The Shaheed missile was under the command of Baba Deep Singh, one of the most honored Sikh martyrs, whose memorial is on the Parkarma, or the walkway of the Harmandir Sahib. The missiles were firmly entrenched in Amritsar. Just outside of the city, they built a fortress and named it Ram Rani and later Ramgarh in honor of the founder of the city, Guru Ram Das. Through repeated invasions, Abdali was able to take over Lahore, Multan, Kashmir, and Sarhand. He also pillaged Mathura and Vrindavan. In the power struggle between the invading Afghans and the ruling Mughals, there was a lot of confusion. The Sikhs took full advantage of this confusion and were able to take over large amounts of territory all over the Punjab. If the conflict between the Afghans and the Mughals hadn't been so bloody, it would have been comical. Abdali would invade India, force the Mughals to make promises, and then return home to Afghanistan with huge amounts of loot. Well, as soon as he would leave, the Mughals would break their promises and Abdali would have to come right back. This was such a bizarre state of affairs that really nobody was minding the store, and so the administration of most of Punjab fell to the Sikhs. When Abdali was returning home after his 4th invasion, the Sikhs kept repeatedly attacking him and managed to relieve him of nearly half of the loot that he was going back with. Sikhs were elusive fighters. They used hit-and-run tactics, and so Abdali couldn't attack them back. Instead, he turned his fury on Amritsar. He blew up the Harmandir Sahib and desecrated the Sarovar. It was following this attack that Baba Deep Singh resolved to go to Amritsar and rebuild the Harmandir Sahib. He was intercepted by the Afghans, and this is when he was severely wounded, and yet he didn't fall until he reached the Harmandir Sahib. Sardar Jassa Singh Ahluwalia and his army avenged the death of Baba Deep Singh and the desecration of the Harmandir Sahib. They went after the Afghans wherever and whenever they could and repeatedly defeated them. As if things weren't messy enough in the Punjab, a new actor showed up on the scene. Adina Bey Khan, the Mughal governor of Lahore, did not like how strong the Sikhs were becoming. He didn't like the Afghans either, so he incentivized the Marathas, who had just taken Delhi, to come to Lahore. He wanted the Marathas to fight the Sikhs so he could take control of Lahore. But he also wanted the Sikhs and the Marathas to fight against the Afghans. Well, eventually the Marathas completed what they had been paid for and they returned to Delhi. Things got complicated yet again when Adina Bey Khan died. The Afghans took over Lahore one more time, but the Marathas returned and the Marathas and the Sikhs together fought the Afghans and defeated them. This resulted in Abdali's 5th invasion of India. His goal this time was to crush the Marathas, which he did in the 3rd Battle of Panipat in 1761. He returned to Afghanistan and Lahore fell to the Sikhs. You can probably guess by now what happens next. Abdali returned for yet another invasion, his sixth one. His sole objective was to crush the Sikhs. The Sikhs saw a massive army marching decisively towards them with the sole intention of destroying them, so they took some defensive maneuvers. They evacuated Lahore and took their families with them. Abdali pursued them and caught up with them in the village of Kuprohera. Most of the Sikhs who were trying to escape were non-combatants. They were children and the elderly. The Sikh men could no longer carry out the hit-and-run tactics that they had used so effectively in the past. So the men and the women surrounded the children and the elderly like a living fortress and started moving towards Barnala. They were vastly outnumbered by the Afghans. Once the Afghans caught up with the Sikhs, the killing began. And it went on until night fell, and the Afghans were so tired of killing that they couldn't kill another person. This was Vadda Ghallughara, or the Greater Massacre, that took place in February 1762. It took place in the Kuprohera village near Malerkotla in the Sangrur district. Over 35,000 Sikhs were killed, and not a single one escaped injury. This was the bloodiest and the largest loss of life in a single day in Sikh history. But if Abdali thought that this would crush the Sikhs, he was sadly mistaken. They lost nearly half of their population on that day, but they remained in Chardi Kala. It was only a matter of months before they were up in arms again and went on to take huge amounts of territory in the Punjab once again.